Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. Alex is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. Dr. Norm Shealy's with us. Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
I am blessed. Yay!
Hey, Dr. Shealy, I got an email from you about the number 86. 86.
Sort of a foul number, isn't it? I don't know.
Well, I understand that you are soon to be 86.
That is true. And you know, the wonderful thing about it, Vance, is I still feel 26.
Yeah.
Physically, mentally, emotionally.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can tell you that health is so important. Without health, we just, we don't want to do anything. I mean, literally. And you're absolutely right. And I think it'd be difficult for the average American to keep up with you in any respect. Whether it be walking, bouncing, exercising, creating, stamina, all that. I think the average guy would have a tough time keeping up with my dear friend, Dr. Norman Shealy. By the way, Dr. Shealy, my plans have worked out so that I will be at your event.
Oh,
if that's
hooray,
okay.
Hooray. Oh, I'm so glad. Yes, thank you.
I was really bummed out. I got the invitation to your birthday party, and I thought, oh no, I think there's a conflict. That one that was in the works for a very long time that I could not change. But it so worked out that a change was made, and Mrs. Finelli and I will be there. So,
well,
thank you
are
for
most welcome.
Okay. I wanted to ask you, you've been traveling. I got a call from Sunny Skidmore. She owns a radio station. She's a big fan of yours. She's almost 90, almost 90. And she said that she gets in her truck and will have her meal for the day in her truck while she's running errands and listening to Mondays with Dr. Shealy. And she doesn't want to miss it. She's all upset. She called me up. She said, hey, I got my truck and I was all ready and it was a rerun on Monday. And I said, yeah. And Dr. Shealy was traveling. So I want to tell you, you have a huge fan with the owner of a radio station, KLID AM 1340 in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. And she listens every day that she possibly can to Norm Shealy. And by the way, she, as the owner of this radio station, she has us broadcasting during drive time, her top slot. And that's how much she thinks of us here at USA Prepares. And thank you very much.
Well, that's wonderful. I wish her a great day.
Yeah. And so she's always interested in the things you have to say. And one of the things that she wanted to know about was olives. She said that there was a friend who had cancer, and this friend had cancer and was given an expiration date by the medical community, medical village. And a year and a half later, this person was doing really, really well. And so they were asked, what caused that? What happened? What happened from a death sentence to vitality? And the answer was olives. So, of course, I asked Sonny Skidmore, what kind of olives? Green olives, black olives, olives in brine, fresh olives, what? She said, olives. All of those. Have you heard of that, Dr. Shealy?
I have not heard of olives as a cure for cancer. However, I'll browse the internet and see if I can find anything.
Okay. All right. So I just wanted to ask that based on her question. Then I got a call yesterday from a police officer. He is currently on duty in another state, not in Missouri. And he told me he had some questions. And I said, do you listen to our broadcast? Have you heard the things I say about the police? Because they're really not very kind. I actually tell it like I see it. And he said, every day. And I said, so I asked him, how does he feel about the things that I say about the police? And he said he agrees. Because I talk about how they're rough on us and they shoot us and with impunity and, things like that. Well, I was underneath the a 20-year-old Mercedes, actually 19-year-old Mercedes, yesterday afternoon. And I was draining the transmission fluid. And I said, there are a lot of things that relate to automobiles and the human body. There are some connections in design. I said, for example, this particular Mercedes that I was working on had a lot of contaminants in the transmission fluid, and it wasn't shifting properly. It had close to 200,000 miles on it. But Mercedes at the time of manufacture said that particular vintage Mercedes had transmission fluid sealed for life. No need to open that transmission. No need to change the fluid. It used to be you change the transmission fluid every 30, 40, 50,000 miles. Well, Mercedes said, no, you don't need to do that. You don't need to open it. As a matter of fact, they took out the dipstick so you could check the transmission fluid, because one of the things that you would do back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s was check the level of the transmission fluid to make sure you had enough. Well, Mercedes said, you don't need to do that. So they literally did not include a dipstick to check the transmission fluid in this particular, 1999, 2000 model Mercedes. They literally put a cap where the transmission dipstick would be, and they put a seal on it so that the only way you could open it up if you had a dipstick was to break the seal. And the only place you could get the seals was Mercedes. Okay. This is a little thing the size of a pea, which is the seal. But, it was like a tamper evident seal. Well, here's the point that I want to make or ask. So we have this contaminated fluid. Everybody else says check your fluid, change your fluid because it gets contaminated, and to maximize the life of your transmission, you need to drain the fluid, change the transmission filter. How about the body, Dr. Shealy? What's happened with this particular Mercedes is you put it into drive or reverse and it would lurch forward. I mean, an unnormal lurch. It's unacceptable. Like if you tried to park this thing, you'd be spinning the tires in the parking lot, and you'd probably get a ticket if a cop saw you do it, because it's that aggressive with this problem. So if we maintain this vehicle, it wouldn't have this problem. And I'm looking at the body, and I'm looking at the abuses of the human body, and I think there's some similarities. Not taking care of the body, preventive maintenance. Do you think that I'm drawing an analogy that's somewhat accurate?
Absolutely. Yes. Okay. Well. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so I was thinking that just a little bit of prevention would have saved this woman's car, because she was, I believe she was a senior citizen. The guy who bought it from her said that, she was a senior citizen, and the car was meticulously taken care of. No dings, no dents. Obviously she parked it where there weren't shopping carts, so go, downhill, running downhill into it. The underneath was no rust. She probably didn't take it out in, those salted days when the roads are salted for snow and sleet and so forth. So it was extremely well taken care of, except the ignorance that she had, and I'm not blaming her, because Mercedes says, oh, no, you don't need to change this oil. It's sealed for life. The manufacturer is saying, do not change the transmission fluid. Don't do it. So I'm sure that she's had this thing serviced at Mercedes. It looks well taken care of, beyond any vehicle I've ever seen. I mean, very, very well taken care of. But she was ignorant to the facts that she needed to change the transmission fluid, which cost her her Mercedes, because ultimately she gave up on it, because the repair from Mercedes would have been more than the vehicle was worth. However, just changing the transmission fluid and filter is going to put this thing into tip-top shape again. So, ignorance. Where I'm going with this is ignorance. I believe there are people who have no idea that vitamins are what you're supposed to take, because the guys who purport to be the manufacturers of the human body, meaning medical doctors, I'm not including you, Dr. Shealy, say, oh, no, you don't need vitamins. You don't need minerals. You don't need to do that. It's sealed for life. What do you think about that?
Well, I think those doctors who say that are unbelievably stupid, and that's as kind as I can be. By the way, there are several articles that I have found already on olives, olive oil, etc. for cancer. There is significant evidence that the olives and olive oil may be one of the major reasons that the Mediterranean diet people have a 24% lower cancer rate than the rest of the world. But there's also laboratory evidence that olive oil kills cancer cells in the laboratory in 30 minutes. So I'm buying a gallon of olives today.
Well, we buy extra virgin olive oil.
Well, yeah, I do too.
And I try to use it. I try to use it for everything that would suggest cooking with oil. And we must have been crazy years ago eating corn oil, vegetable oil, canola oil, right? We must have been crazy, duped by the big Madison Avenue.
And part of that craziness that began back in the 50s was conversion to margarine, which is one of the most stupid parts yet. That's even worse than corn oil by itself.
Years ago, my mom was at the hospital, and they gave her this spread, this butter substitute, and I left it in the studio to see how long it would last. It was fine for years. Years. We'll be right back. So my mom was given this little tub, a little tub, but I mean it's little, like the size of a quarter, and it had some butter substitute in it. It did not have butter in it, and I thought, I'll just take this home from the hospital. My mom's certainly not going to eat that, and I brought it home and I left it open on the studio desk for years. And I thought, I want to see what happens to this. Is mold going to consume it? What is going to happen? Well, I can tell you that the only thing that happened is whatever could volatilize from that margarine volatilized, and it got smaller. Took a couple years, but it eventually was half the size, half the volume. But nobody was interested in eating it. I mean, none of the airborne bacteria was interested in this. Didn't grow any mold, nothing. So I thought, this stuff might be a good lubricant. If I want to put it on, nuts and bolts and screws, it'd probably last a long time, as a lubricant. So maybe that's what it's good for. So I went to look up margarine, and I found an article from MayoClinic.org, and it says, which spread is better for my heart, butter or margarine? And I have to read a couple paragraphs to make sure that you hear this, class. Margarine usually tops butter when it comes to health. Let me say that a different way. Margarine usually tops butter when it comes to heart health. Margarine is made from vegetable oil, so it contains unsaturated good fats, polyunsaturated and mono unsaturated fats. These types of fats help reduce low-density lipoprotein, LDL, or bad cholesterol, when substituted for saturated fat. Butter, on the other hand, is made from animal fat, so it contains more saturated fat. But not all margarines are created equal. Some margarines contain trans fat. In general, the more solid the margarine, the more trans fat it contains. So stick margarines usually have more trans fat than tub margarines do. And it says the bottom line.
The bastards are poison because they contain partially, quote, hydrogenated fats, and that makes them worse than lard.
Mm-hmm. And so the bottom line.
I'm surprised Mayo Clinic is no better than any other place. In my opinion, it sucks. I'm sorry, but that's my opinion.
Okay. Let me just read one more paragraph. Trans fat, like saturated fat, increases blood cholesterol levels and the risk of heart disease. In addition, trans fat lowers high-density lipoprotein, HDL, or good cholesterol levels. Then it goes on to say, and this is the most amazing thing to me, Mayo Clinic is saying this, this is a quote, so skip the stick and opt for soft or liquid margarine instead, end quote. What they're saying is skip butter and go for soft tub margarine or liquid margarine instead. That's what they're saying.
And I have been saying since the early 60s that margarine sucks. So that shows you you're over 55 years behind.
Yeah. Now, I want to make sure the class understands. I am not sticking up for margarine. I just can't believe what I was reading. That's why I read it. So
no, I understand.
One day they had a sale on butter, and our son was traveling, and there was a sale on butter. So I said, well, that's great. Get some. So he came home with about 200 pounds, literally. He said, but Dad, that's where it is. It's in the freezer. And a couple years ago, John Statmiller was here, and we had some in this couple 100 pounds of butter was some European butter, European type, I guess. And John wanted to try that, so off he went with a couple pounds back to Texas. But yes, and we're still eating the same butter. Keep for years and years and years in the refrigerator. So we still have it in the cases, and we're still using butter. And so we don't use margarine at the Finelli household. As a matter of fact, do you know you can even make heat popcorn kernels in butter if you use low heat, and it doesn't burn. You can do that. And so my question for Dr. Shealy is popcorn okay to eat? We'll be right back. So, Dr. Shealy, the question is popcorn. Now I'm talking about just taking some unpopped popcorn kernels, either yellow or white, putting them in a pan with some butter, nothing else, just butter, and lightly heating it until they pop with light heat so they don't burn. Would you say that is an okay snack, or is that bad for us?
I would think that's an excellent snack.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you said that, and I'll tell TJ, because when I take out the popcorn, he hears the sound of the kernels in the jar, and then he perks up. He loves popcorn. Absolutely loves it.
He eats more than all the rest of the family combined.
He does. He will sit next to me, and he will look at me, and I'll hand him one at a time, and I'll say, easy, easy. And he takes that out of my hand very gently. He loves popcorn. So we're talking about unsalted popcorn. And by the way, it keeps a long time. A long time. How do I know? Well, back in the 90s, before we moved to Missouri, I bought 50 pounds of popcorn. One of those bags you could buy at Sam's Club. And there's no bugs in it, and it just keeps popping. I packed it in nitrogen. I got some 5-gallon buckets, and I brand new buckets. I put a plastic liner in them. I put the popcorn in there. I filled it with nitrogen, sealed it, and I slowly take it out of that, put it in jars, and like a sauce, something spaghetti sauce might come in, that kind of a jar, and that's what we dispense it from. So it lasts a long time, and I can say for sure. So TJ thanks you, and I thank you, Dr. Shealy, for giving us the good advice on popcorn being okay and healthy. Well, is it healthy? It's got a lot of fiber, right?
Well, it also is one of the better grains.
Okay.
I mean, I actually I don't eat it very often because I have my slush breakfast, but I love yellow corn grits.
Yes.
Cooked with butter and cheese.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Is popcorn GMO? From what I understand, when I bought it, it was not GMO.
Yeah, I don't know today.
Okay. I just looked it up. As of 2014, there's no GMO popcorn on store shelves. There's no, as of 2014. So ours was before 2014. So, class, I suggest you do a little bit of research, see if you can find out if, let's see, is organic, I don't have the answer yet. Okay, so I'll do some research and I'll let you know. You've been traveling, Dr. Shealy, and you've been giving some presentations and some seminars.
Yep.
Can you tell us about the latest one last week?
Well, the last one was the weekend before Thanksgiving, and that was to Houston, Texas, where I gave an all-day workshop to the local ARE, that's the Edgar Casey group, on blueprint for holistic healing. And, the ARE is the Edgar Casey group. I've been affiliated with them for 46 years. They're always one of my favorite parties. They're so positive. Their health habits are infinitely better than the average American, and they're just positive thinking.
Okay. And can you give us a little overview of that blueprint?
Well, I could give you all the slides, or I can read some of them to you. Basically, it is my concept of what is truly holistic health, and it's the only health there is, in my opinion. I start off by pointing out that holistic medicine is everything. It actually even would include drugs and surgery, especially for acute illnesses. But the major holistic tools are past life therapy, transcutaneous acupuncture with the bliss oils, nutrition and exercise, self-regulation, autogenic training, and biogenics, the list craniostimulated, the TENS unit, the pulsed electromagnetic field or PIMP device, the scalar device, vibratory music, regular acupuncture, all kinds of body work, osteopathic, chiropractic, massage, etc., photostimulation, homeopathy, the use of intention, emotional freedom technique, the rejuvenatrix and orgone, among others. Tell me when to stop.
I'm listening, and I'm writing as fast as I can. I can't write as fast as you were saying.
I'll send you a copy of the slides when we finish.
Okay. And
medicine. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You want a question?
Well, I was going to say intention. Can we get to after you're done with the conventional medicine? Let's talk about intention.
Absolutely overwhelming. The major work on that is done by Dr. William Tiller, a physicist, and Bill has demonstrated for the last over 30 years that he can actually imprint an electric motor and do all kinds. For instance, right now, this year, since May, the crime level in Springfield, Missouri is decreasing by the month. He started in May with an intention to decrease all levels of crime. He puts that intention into an electric motor and then broadcast it to Springfield, Missouri, and our crime rate has been going down every month since he started. He started out years ago with looking at enzymes in fruit flies and eventually went to people. One of my doctoral students did her doctoral dissertation by putting patient names, just running them continually through the computer in an imprinted motor that was for improving health. There was a highly statistical increase in the health of these individuals and decrease in illnesses and symptoms. So he's been doing that work for 30 years. I've been part of it with him, and it was one of my, the mother of one of my other students who suggested the crime project, and we're in the middle of that right now.
I'm sitting back fascinated. So I'm thinking about how this would occur. So are you saying, so you take the names of people, first names, last names, type them into a file, let's say a text file, and then have the computer run that file, okay?
Right.
So
in the presence of an intentionally imprinted motor.
Okay. Now, how do you imprint a motor? What is the protocol?
4 people in meditation sit with a motor between them and actually mentally spend 20 minutes putting the intention of whatever they want to do into that motor.
Okay, so it takes 4 people?
Well, I don't know. That's the way he does it.
Okay, so 4 people. Now, when we're talking about a motor, are we talking about, like, if you, back in the 1960s, if you had a washing machine that was from the 1940s, you could take out the motor. We're talking about an electric motor, or like a motor that drives a compressor.
That's what it is. Yep.
Okay, an alternating current motor, like a third of a horsepower, quarter of a horsepower, fifth of a horsepower, 2 horsepower, a pool pump motor, any of those AC type motors, right?
Exactly.
All right. Now, then once, because I'm going to try this. I want to make sure. I've got one of these motors, and I've got a computer, so I can write a basic program and have this program just put it into a loop, and I can say Tom, Dick, Harry, Mary, George, Sally, those kinds of things. And I can. All right, so the computer's going to go through this loop, and it's going to run. And does the electric motor have to be plugged in?
Yes, it has to be running 24 hours a day.
Okay. Well, that's easy. I might want to start with a smaller motor. And now, is there evidence that the larger the motor, the bigger the broadcast area, or is that irrelevant?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay. All right. So I'll start with a small motor, small AC motor. As a matter of fact, I have a clock, an old Telcron clock, and Telcron was the name of the motor. It was a synchronous motor run on alternating current, and because the electric utility companies were so concerned about having the frequency, the 60 cycles, be so accurate, you could have a motor that was dependent on the frequency of 120 volt electricity that would come out of your wall outlet. That clocks would run on that frequency, use very little electricity, and they were called Telcron, Telcron. Well, as a matter of fact, the proof of that is in older homes, you would see above the kitchen sink an outlet, a specially designed outlet that would allow you to hang your electric AC clock above the kitchen sink and plug it into this recessed outlet. You've seen those, right, Dr. Shealy?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we don't use them anymore. I don't know why. Hardly ever see them, but we've got one here. So I can use that as an AC motor, I guess. All right, I'm going to try it. And it'll take a couple months, and I've got some intentions for our farm. I'll just have the family, have all of us sit around with the intention for 20 minutes around this motor, running the names, and off we go. I'm pretty excited about trying that. Okay, my next question for you is, and this applies to me, and I'm pretty sure it applies to you, Dr. Shealy. When I'm traveling, which I haven't done in a while, and if I was at an airport, I would sit down in one of those airport waiting areas, when you're waiting for the plane to depart. There'd be somebody sitting next to me, and I'd probably wait maybe 10 seconds before I say hi to somebody. Hey, how are you? and I'd introduce myself, and we'd strike up a conversation. I have a feeling that you're very similar in that respect, whether it be you sit down next to someone you don't know on an airplane, he's got or she's got the seat next to you, or you sit down in the waiting area waiting for your plane. What kinds of things do you find people discussing? Do they discuss health? What do they discuss with you? People you don't know, met for the first time. What are they interested in? Can we talk about that when we come back, Dr. Shealy?
Of course.
Okay. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com. So, Dr. Shealy, when you're traveling and you meet people for the first time and they're sitting next to you on a plane and it's just the luck of the draw, what kinds of things do they want to talk about? What are they interested in? And
well, I would say 9 out of 10 times they ask me, my name and what I do. And once they know that I'm a physician, they start talking about health and medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Almost never anything
do they
else.
Do they talk about maladies, things that are wrong with them, and they want help?
Right,
your help?
their own personal questions, just like my call-in radio show on Thursday.
Yeah. And for those of you who haven't heard Dr. Shealy's call-in radio show, he broadcasts on Thursday afternoons on KWTO, 560 AM in Springfield, Missouri. And when I have been in the studio with Dr. Shealy, I would hear something like this. He would say, he's Dr. Shealy, he's on the air, and you can be too, and bang, there'd be the first caller, second caller, third caller, and it was call after call after call for the entire hour, nonstop. Is it still like that, Dr. Shealy?
Pretty much so, yeah. We average 13 calls in the roughly 45 minutes that I have out of the hour.
Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing on your yellow legal pad as many as 22 calls in an hour.
That is correct.
Unbelievable. And what kinds of, when people call for your medical show, Dr. Shealy, what kind of questions do they typically have?
Well, it's I've got an elevated cholesterol. What can I do to lower it without taking a statin drug? Or they want to place me on rat poison, warfarin. What can I do as a substitute for that? How do I lose weight? I've got anxiety. I've got depression. I've got pain here and there and everywhere. Diabetes. I mean, it's a wide variety of problems, and mostly chronic problems, because that is where conventional medicine fails frequently. It is on a scale of 0 to 10. For a chronic disease, I give conventional medicine a 5. It just isn't very good. In acute illness, I give it a 7.5.
Very interesting that you say that, and I've noticed that when I talk to doctors and nurses and medical practitioners at hospitals, they really are not interested in alternatives to their way of doing things. Not only are they not interested, they don't know much about it, if anything. And I'm talking about CBD oil, cannabis oil, or hemp oil, I should say. They don't know much about that. They say, yeah, I've heard about it, and I've got a couple patients who are trying it, but don't know much about it. Should I be taking vitamins? Well, no, you get all the vitamins and minerals that you need in
that
food.
That is one of the most stupid things of conventional medicine. They are ignoring, ignorance is ignoring fact. And so I can not only say they're stupid, I can say they're ignorant when they say that.
Right. And that's where I was going with that description about the woman who sold her perfectly good Mercedes, except for the fact that it needed a transmission fluid change and a filter change, because she was ignorant of the facts. She did everything else right. I mean, she maintained it meticulously, except she followed the directions of her automotive doctor, Mercedes, who said, no, you don't need to change the fluid in that. So she ended up getting rid of a perfectly good vehicle that just had one problem, the transmission. And a simple $40 worth of parts, fluid, flush, and a new filter, and a new transmission pan gasket is all it needed. 2 hours worth of work, $40 worth of parts, and back on the road it goes. It's as simple as that. We come back, Dr. Shealy, can we talk about the Tarahumara tribe in Mexico? They're known as the Lightfoot. They can run and outrun an athlete with ease. And what happens to them when they move to the city? They stop running. They get huge, beyond huge. We talk about that when we come back, the Tarahumara.
Yes.
Okay, hour number 2. The USA Prepares. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. Website, normshealy.com. normshealy.com. And phone number, 417-351-5221. 417-351-5221 is Dr. Shealy's office number at his clinic in Springfield, Missouri, if you'd like to give him a call and set up an appointment. Dr. Shealy, there's a tribe of Indians in Mexico, and they're called the Tarahumara, Tarahumara, Tarahumara Indians, and they live in the mountains. And for fun, they will have a race, and they'll run for hours and hours, and they'll wear these. Well, they're like flip-flops, sandals, if you will, that are strapped on. So they're not wearing hiking boots or running shoes or, sneakers. They're wearing these kind of sandals. And they can outrun an athlete. Let's say an American athlete. They can outrun an American athlete. And so genetics over time has enabled them to adjust to the altitudes. And for food, they actually hunt for food. And I'm not talking about what American hunters do, where they stand at a distance with a rifle and shoot 200 or 300 yards, and kill an animal with a projectile. They actually run after the animal. So if they see a deer, they'll run after it. And they will literally, they are so powerful, the Tarahumara, that they can run and outrun a deer. Now, a deer can, a short burst, go faster. But over the long haul, the deer, because deer cool by panting, because when they're running, they can't pant and they can't cool themselves, and they will overheat and fall over and die, or fall over and not be able to run anymore, and then the Tarahumara, kill the deer with a spear or something like that. The point is that these guys are fit and trim and lean, and they actually, can outrun and hunt on foot, wearing sandals, through the mountains, high altitudes, their food. Now, when the Tarahumara leave that environment and they move to the big city, what happens is they get fat. And when I say fat, I don't mean fat. I mean huge. I'm talking like in the 500-pound neighborhood. Because their body is so used to, based on the research that I've learned, their body is so used to, through genetic mutations, of not having a lot of food. And when it does have food, it turns it to fat so that it preserves it for the long term, for the body's survival, for the lean days. So it's not always good hunting days. So they can survive these periods of famine. Well, but when they have plenty of food and they can have, Doritos and McDonald's hamburgers and whatever else they have in the big city, these guys they store that fat and they just become huge. So here's the question. Is that what's happening to us?
Wonderful. And not unexpected, is it? Let's face it.
No.
I mean, those are two extremes of human behavior. Couch potato and high athlete.
I look at Mrs. Finelli. She was probably 115 pounds when she was when we got married, 115, maybe 120 at the most. You know, when we were dating. She's still about the same weight, hasn't changed. I've put on a few pounds. I was, like 127, and now I'm 138. But
I'm not laughing at 138 pounds, by the way. You're so far below the 99+% of people.
And I look at our boys, and so we're all here on the farm. Everything's far, everything's heavy, everything's uphill, and so it's work. And I'm thinking, I think there's a connection between the Tarahumara with their lifestyle, being lean and fit, and the Finelli family where, we work and work and work, and we burn off that energy. And I think that if I sat down in front of the TV and just had a, remote control and, put my feet up and just kind of ate and watched TV, I think I would grow too.
Oh, you definitely would. You almost can't avoid it. If you don't stand a few hours a day, let alone walk, you gain weight. People who just sit all day gain weight.
Mrs. Finelli's grandmother lived well into her 90s, and she attributed her long life to several things. Of course, eating right. But one of the things was that she lived in an old Victorian home. I'm talking built in the late 1800s, and had really high ceilings, like 12-foot tall ceilings. This was a really large house. And they bought it back during the Depression. And her bedroom was on the second floor. So she had to climb all those stairs many times a day. So even when her husband passed away and she was no longer farming, she still climbed those stairs many times a day, up and down stairs. And she thought that was part of why she was so healthy. She was mentally
right.
healthy. Mm-hmm.
Stair climbing is one of the best exercises there is. It's better than walking.
I remember back in the 1970s that one of the things that an employer would look for when they were hiring people who they expected a lot of, I'm talking about middle management and above, what they would do is during the interview, they'd say, well, let's go upstairs. Tell you what, forget the elevator. Let's just take the stairs. It's faster. And what they would look for, Dr. Shealy, is to see if the candidate for that job used the handrail or not. And if you...
Now that's research.
Yeah. So if the candidate, if they were looking for a long-term employee, to shape the direction of the company and, really perform over the long haul, they wanted to make sure he or she was physically fit. And if you use the handrail, that interview was almost over right then and there. So that was just a telltale sign. And think about that, class. How many times do you see people at the Chinese factory outlet pushing those carts empty? Not because they've got stuff in the cart, because they need that handrail as a crutch. Now, how did they get to that point? That would be the question. And obviously, part of it is because they shop at the Chinese factory outlet and they eat extruded food, which is the kind of thing that Dr. Shealy has been telling us for at least 7 years that I know of. At least. Mark in Illinois, welcome. You're on with Dr. Norman Shealy.
Hello, Mark.
Hey,
What's up?
Hi,
hey,
good
Mark.
morning. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good morning. I have a question about statistics, general statistics concerning the health of America. What is it with people that are low on vitamin D and have low red blood cell count?
Well, vitamin D is the number one immune enhancer. It's good for everything in your body because the immune system is the part of the body that goes out of balance more often than any other. And so it can lead to all kinds of deficiencies. But the number one thing everybody, every adult should take is adequate vitamin D3.
Okay, what would a person do to correct their red blood cell count? I know you said vitamin D3, but is there like vitamin B12 or just a better vitamin B complex?
Well, B12 can be part of it. There's a specific disease called pernicious anemia, which is a deficiency of B12, but just a low red blood cell alone is likely to be more an iron deficiency.
Okay, so if a person has a skillet, like an iron skillet, they'd be getting a lot of iron, wouldn't they, when they'd be cooking their food in an iron skillet?
Yes, you're quite right. And, of course, interestingly, anemia is much more common in women than it is in men. And after, middle age, whatever that is, most men should not take iron supplements unless they know that they need it because of anemia. Because there is something called iron storage disease, where iron is stored in the liver and can cause actually liver failure because of too much iron in the liver. But
so
if the average person eats meat, he or she is not likely to get anemic.
Speaking of meat, I noticed I've heard a lot of professional people, medical people talking about, things you should eat and things that you shouldn't eat. But I never hear very many people talking about, a Levitical diet where God said, these are the things you can eat that are clean and these are the things that you shouldn't eat that are unclean. And, there's a promise in the Bible about that is that it says if you keep that, he will protect you.
Yes.
I mean, what do you think about that, about unclean meats and clean meats?
Well, again, the difference is our preparation today versus 1,000 and more years ago. We have to be very careful about all food, including even vegetables and fruits, because bacteria are rampant in all meat if it's not prepared properly. But I understand, of course, the prohibition against pork especially, and I understand the religious reasons. I don't understand the medical reasons.
Mark, did you want to hold that thought and go through the break?
Yeah, I'll hold.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll be right back. Dr. Norm Shealy is with us, normshealy.com, and Mark in Illinois is with us. And Dr. Shealy, Mark asked a question about using cast iron skillets, and when I make scrambled eggs, I use butter in a small cast iron skillet, and just scramble an egg. Now, as a guy who's mid-60s, should I not be using a cast iron skillet, or am I okay with that?
Well, most people are okay with that. I would presume that at least every 3 or 4 years you have what I call a basic medical exam, where they do a CBC and, a comprehensive metabolic profile. That will pick up early any problems that should come along. So you're quite okay as long as you don't ignore some kind of regular, at some kind of interval, physical exam. Or even
back to you, Mark. I just wanted to get a little more information about that. Back to you, Mark.
Okay, yeah. I studied this a long time ago. I don't have the articles in front of me, but I noticed one thing in the Torah, in the book of in the law. It says not to eat meat, any type of meat with blood in it. And the reason why I believe that is because it causes heart disease, and the blood actually contributes to heart disease. And the other thing I wanted to share with you, and you can check these things out yourself, and that is pork has an enzyme in it that causes arthritis. in the body, but all kinds of arthritis through the entire body. I believe that's the reason why God, and there may be other reasons too, but I believe that's the reason why he told his people, the Israelite people, not to partake of the unclean food, because he knew that the health issues down the road that this would cause in the body.
Well, everything affects everyone differently, and our genetics and our disposition over many, many, many years affects us more than anything. People in Germany, for instance, eat more pork than any other culture that I know of in the world, but their instance of osteoarthritis is no heavier than ours. And but each and every food has its own intolerance with certain people. But in general, your genetics determine more than any other aspect.
Okay, well, there is a promise, though, to it, and I'm not, I would just suggest people, search this out and look at it. But there's a promise in the Word of God. It says that if you decide that you want to choose to obey that, that the Lord will, he'll protect you, or you'll have, I believe you'll be protected from the plagues and diseases that are most common in, at least our society today.
Let's face it, one's spiritual beliefs affect you very dominantly, and so that's another part of the whole. Your emotions, your spirituality, your tendency to be afraid versus safe, that kind of thing.
Well, back to the red blood cell count, would the vitamin B12 be good to take every day, or would you take that? How often would you take that? If you were to take vitamin B12, how long would you take it every day, put it underneath your tongue, let it dissolve, or would it be better to take a vitamin B complex with the overall Bs?
Well, overall, for the average person, the B complex with 25 milligrams of all the major 1, 2, 3 to 6, etc., plus usually 1,000 micrograms of B12 is the best way to do it.
Okay.
Specific people who have again, there's a genetic predisposition to pernicious anemia. So and then there are certain defects in B12 metabolism where people need methyl B12 instead of the other forms of B12.
What is that like? What is the one you're talking about with you mentioned 2 types of B12?
Well, yeah, if you're going to take B12, I prefer everybody just take methyl B12. Instead of cyanocobalamin, you take methyl B12.
Would 5,000 units be too much a day with that?
That I would not take that much. 1,000 a day is 1,000 micrograms is adequate.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for calling.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Dr. Shealy and I will be right back. I was reading an article, USA Today, and the article discusses alcohol abuse. And I have a feeling it's way worse than we may think it is. And the title of the article is Alcohol is Killing More People, Young and Younger. The biggest increases are in women. And this was published by USA Today, November 16th. So it's pretty recent. And it talks about, this is, because we have the opioid epidemic, that's, a lot of people are paying attention to that, including Dr. Shealy. But in addition to that, because of the opioid epidemic, people are really not seeing as much of the alcohol epidemic. And there are many overdoses. People are really hurting themselves through cancer, liver cirrhosis, pancreatitis, suicide. And that seems like to be a big thing. And further research that I've done says that people are depressed. So they're turning to alcohol because of their depression. I know a guy who had a job, nice job, lived in a nice house. I'm talking about a 2-story colonial on a farm, really nice house. There's nobody that would say, well, I wouldn't want to live there. It was a really nice farm on the East Coast. And he started drinking. got his first DUI, then he got another DUI, then he got another DUI, and the last time he got his DUI, he spent a year in the clink, and as a result of that, he lost his job, was unable to be gainfully employed, lost his house, his farm, his family, and so drinking cost this man everything. Everything. His family, his house, his driver's license, his job. And Dr. Shealy, are you seeing in your travels, in your discussions, the increase in alcohol abuse, alcoholism?
Actually, interestingly, they don't come to me. Interestingly, even narcotic addicts don't come here, even though I've worked with getting people off narcotics for over 45 years. In other words, addicts rarely seek treatment unless they're forced to.
Mm-hmm. I've heard people say, well, they've got to hit rock bottom, before they'll pull out of it. Is there any truth to that, Dr. Shealy?
Most of the time, that is true. Now,
how horrible.
Again, Alcoholics Anonymous has been around since I was in high school. So, it's been around over 70 years. And they do have a fair success rate, greater than any addiction center.
I was traveling and had a few days of we'll call it downtime. And I decided that I would like to go visit an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. So I got on the internet, and they're all over the city. I happen to be near a city, and so I decided to go visit an AA meeting. And class, I don't want you to think I'm a teetotaler, but I'm pretty close to being a teetotaler. I hardly ever drink alcohol. Now, we have it here at the farm, but I didn't buy it, and I hardly ever drink it. And it's a pretty rare day when I have a half of a beer. Pretty rare. I mean, a six-pack would last me a year, easily. But, so I'm not saying that I'm an alcoholic and I wanted to check out AA for that reason. I just wanted to know what it's about, and I was so impressed. And at the end of the meeting, I talked to one of these middle-aged gals, and I said, I'm really impressed. And I said, I can't believe how bright so many of you are. I mean, these were like some of the pillars of the village were there. I mean, there was a guy with a long, 3/4 length camel hair coat in the winter, kind of like something maybe Donald Trump would wear. I imagine, he was a physician or a lawyer or, some politician, some well-paid person, very bright. And so this gal said to me, oh, yeah, we're just a bunch of drunks. And, but they don't drink. But they call themselves alcoholics, even though they haven't had, even a teaspoon full of beer for 20 years. But they would still refer to themselves as alcoholics.
Well, yeah.
And I was so impressed. Mm-hmm.
That men are 4 times as likely to be alcoholics as women. That tells us something I think is important. Over 11% of Americans have driven under the influence of alcohol. Out of 16.6 million people in the country who have alcoholism, 2.6 are also dependent upon illicit drugs. 95% of those who need treatment for alcoholism do not feel they need treatment. That's the problem. Just like nicotine, they don't feel they need treatment.
Okay. Well, we know for a fact that if you have someone visit your house and they're a smoker, right around breakfast time, they're looking for that cigarette. Okay. They want a cigarette, right away. And they've got to have it. And they're stirring around and they've got ants in their pants and they're looking for that nicotine fix. But I think there's a slight difference, maybe it's a major difference, that people who smoke know they shouldn't smoke, but will say they can't stop. They'll tell you. There was a 70-year-old woman here who was a nurse, and she was visiting the farm, and she was smoking. I said, yeah, quit that. She said, I can't quit it. I've tried. I can't quit. And she knows that it's wrinkling her up. She knows that it's aging her faster than, the number of days she's been on the planet. She knows all this, but she can't quit. And I think what you said is really important. Alcoholism, those guys kind of deny that they have a problem. They just think, it's okay, and they can stop anytime. But I don't think they can as easily as they think they can. So what do we do for alcoholics, Dr. Shealy?
Well, again, if they want to quit, I would use the cranial PEMF device because it works phenomenally in opioid addicts, which is certainly worse than alcoholism.
Pulsed electromagnetic frequency. So if someone wants to get one, they can get that from you at normshealy.com. Dr. Shealy, what do they do with it?
Well, they use it on their head a minimum of an hour a day. Just, sit or lie down with it on the top of the head, and it works phenomenally well. It's virtually 100% cure for people with narcotic addiction.
And you think the same would be true for alcoholism?
Well, I think it should be, but again, they're not as likely to seek treatment. Remember, we have 3 million prisoners in this country. Over 86% of them are there because of narcotics.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, class, if there are any of you who are experts in alcoholism, have family members who have alcohol problems, and you want to share that with us anonymously and tell us what it's like, what you've done, what works, what doesn't work, let's do a broadcast on that. So send me an email at instructor@USA Prepares, instructor@USA.com. You don't have to use your real name, or you can, whatever you'd like to do. But I think that the problem is bigger than we may think it is. And I think there's an enormous amount of depression. I had a call recently at the farmhouse. A guy called me up, and he said, so when's the meetup? And I said, well, there are a lot of us who are involved. There's Dr. Shealy. I mean, what he's talking about is we like to have put the band back together and, have a get-together for a couple days with Rick Miller, Norm Shealy, Joey from Michigan, a whole bunch of our instructors, John Regan, Rich Scheben, and Guineith, if she'd like to come from Australia, a whole bunch of us, and get together. And this man is very interested in when that's going to be. And I said, so what are you doing? And he said, well, I don't have a job. I quit my job. I said, okay. So what's going on? He said, well, I'm kind of depressed. I said, okay, why is that? And he said, well, I don't have a woman in my life. I'm not doing what I want to do. I don't feel productive. I'm depressed. I said, okay. What do you like to do? He said, I like to hunt and fish. I said, no problem. Would you like to be a hunting and fishing guide? He said, I'd love it. I said, okay, so that's your hobby, right? Right. So his hobby is hunting and fishing, and he would like to turn that into a position where he can earn some money. I said, no problem. We'll get in touch with Rich Scheben. He loves to do that too. And maybe we can point you in the direction to get you involved with a company that does tours, hunting and fishing tours. There you go. So he's on his way to doing that. But what I'm saying is I believe there are a lot of people who are lost, who don't know what they want to do, who are bored, unhappy, depressed, and that could turn them into abusing alcohol and drugs. Does that tie together with what you're seeing, Dr. Shealy?
Absolutely, unequivocal.
Mm-hmm. So we have to have meaning in our life, and yesterday my son and I were sitting at the kitchen table, and it was the end of the day, and we were just exhausted from working. He says, they said, there's a lot of stuff going on at this farm, isn't there? I said, yeah. He said, we can't finish it all, can we? I said, no. Our list is larger than we have the ability to accomplish the things that, we'd like to do and need to do. But we just keep chipping away at it. It's not like we say, you know what, there's so many things to do we can't do it, so let's turn on the TV. That does not happen. But we're not bored either. We're I won't say overwhelmed, but there are a lot of things that we need to be doing. But we just keep working at it. We're not bored. And I can't imagine being depressed because there's so many things that I've got to pay attention to. And I think maybe that's what others can do as well. Dr. Shealy, I got an email from Joey, instructor in Michigan. It's kind of alarming. And the reason it's alarming is it's not something that I think that we have not been thinking about. And that is 13 on Your Side. It's an ABC news site. Has this article. It's WZZM13.com. Psychiatric Urgent Care Center coming to West Michigan. Opening in March, Pine Rest Christian Mental Health Services is bringing a new kind of urgent care center to town, offering a place created for people experiencing mental health problems. What they're saying is if you've got an urgent problem, you can go to urgent care or the emergency room. But those emergency rooms are really not designed to take care of mental health emergencies. And so this particular clinic, if you will, is designed to do that. What's alarming about this to me is that there's even a need for this. A need for emergency health care based on mental problems. Now, I know that there are mental hospitals. I know that they've been closing over the years, but sanitariums, I think that's what they used to be called. Dr. Shealy, do you think this is something that is increasing? Mental health problems are increasing such that we're going to need... Okay.
I agree. And it is the result of television, and the pharmacomafia. In other words, the drugs that the pharmacomafia provides for all mental diseases, I'm on air, so I'm cautious, suck. Not one of them is really good for anything. They often cause more problems than they help.
And when you say television, is it because we have actresses who are very careful about how they're photographed? In today's world, these women are, they're made up heavily. They are digitally enhanced, meaning, well, maybe their waist is a little bit bigger than they'd like, so they'll slim that down with Photoshop. If they've got a pimple here or a blemish there, they will erase them with Photoshop. If their nose is a little bit longer or shorter or wider or more pointy than they'd like, they fix that with Photoshop. If their legs have some, if they're a little larger than they'd like, they'll fix that with Photoshop. So then the person who might be looking at the media, a girl would say, or a woman would say, wow, well, I'd really like to look like that. Well, okay, they'd like to look like that, but even the person that appears to look like that doesn't look like that because it's enhanced. Are you saying that part of the problem with television is that we believe that people look the way they're portrayed on the screen and actually they don't, and we have this false sense of, boy, we could be like that if, but we're not, so we get depressed?
Yeah, all of the above.
Part of it?
All of the above. And inactivity itself depresses people. In other words, a couch potato is 10 times more likely to be depressed than someone who's physically active. Basically.
And is that okay.
And in any given year, 18.5% of all Americans have some kind of mental illness. And actually 4% have a serious mental illness in a given year. So if you take that annual, and a minimum of 40% of Americans throughout their life will have depression.
And based on what you said, in any given year, if there are 5 people in a room, that would suggest that one of them has a mental illness.
Yes.
1 out of 5. Well, we're in a lot of trouble. Well, class, diet, exercise, eat the right foods, and have things to do. Find a hobby and get moving on it. Dr. Shealy, thank you so much for being with us.
Always
sharing your time.
a pleasure.
Thank you so much.